Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid and another morning walk and talk. Sorry this one's a little bit delayed. I had plans to record this on Monday, it's not Wednesday, but we've had such bad weather here the last few days, and you guys seem to enjoy these videos when they're outside, so can't fight the algorithm. Got to try to do it the way that the people want it, right? So that being said, a lot's been going on in Wisconsin football since the last time we did one of these, so got a pretty good group of questions here, so let's just dive right into it. All right, so we're leading off with the transfer portal. And the question coming in is, when we look at with so much going on in the transfer portal so far, which position groups do I think have improved? Which position groups do I feel have stayed the same? Which ones have I seen that are getting worse? Well, let's start at the bottom and we'll work our way up to the top. Positions, obviously, they got worse so far. Cornerback. And I hesitate to say that, but it is technically true. Just on the fact that we lost, 4 bodies? And we have not replaced them all yet. So, in terms of straight numbers, we've lost a lot. Now, the guys that we have brought in, Jameer Latimer and Johnny Hill, I believe is his name. Hills was a starter. Hill was a starter at Marshall, was a part-time starter last year at Miami. He got injured. Latimer was a full-time starter at Jacksonville State. So we get guys like that coming in to replace the Jonas DeClonas and the Amari Snowdens and the Jace Arnolds of the world, who didn't do anything, who didn't really have an impact on the roster. So in terms of replacing production, so far we've done pretty good. I don't think they're done in the cornerback room. I still think they're looking to pick up a couple, and they have about a week. I mean, classes don't start, I think, until the 21st, but they want to get everybody locked in pretty solidly so we don't have any problems with admissions and stuff like that. So they're going to get that sorted out. I also think there's a very good chance that they might maybe only add one more now and then look to add more in the spring portal window, just because they want to give the young guys, Emily Agord, Jay Harper, guys like that, Karis Gaines, a chance to see what they can do getting a lot of live reps. But I don't think they're done with the corners. Staying the same, well, all the positions haven't added anything, really. I mean, that's the dumb answer, but it's true. Running backs are fine. Offensive line is fine. Linebackers, we added linebackers. Sorry. Yeah, so I guess there you go. Those are the two positions that I'd say haven't really changed much for the better. I hesitate to say quarterback. Quarterback is a weird one. Because again, we are replacing the should have been starter, the had to be starter, and the heir apparent who didn't get any playing time because he couldn't push the had to be starter. And we're replacing that with a full-time starter and a full-time starter as a freshman. So, consistent production-wise, I think we're plus. Numbers-wise, we're actually obviously minus. But I guess my level of confidence in the quarterback room was a lot better than it was going into the spring, as if we were going to have Braidlock and maybe Metoyer as our 1 and 2. I think the 1-2 combination of Billy Edwards Jr. and Danny O'Neal is, on paper and on film so far, a better pairing than the previous two. So, Okay, and also improving, I would say the safeties, just because I love Matt Young. I think he's going to be a star. I like Matt Trainer as well. And again, what we're losing in the portal, and I'm just thinking about the portal here, in Braden Moore, the guys we're replacing with they produce better. And they're coming in with playing experience. We're losing potential and we're gaining production. Albeit at the lower level, but still, it's production. And it's recent production, not high school production 3 years ago. So where it stands right now, I'm pretty happy with that group. So if we want to summarize groups that I think went down, cornerbacks, groups that I think went up. Okay, after the quarterbacks, definitely D-line has improved significantly. Finally, they kind of went scorched earth, or maybe scorched earth by necessity because guys left on their own. But it sucks to lose James Thompson Jr. But losing Kurt Neal, we didn't lose anything. And the best reason why we improved on the defensive line is the positional versatility that we now have. And what I like what's going on in the Badger content space right now is a lot of questions about where we think the defense is going, what directions. And I'm hearing all sorts of different things. And I love hearing that because that means we are building some versatility. And when you want to play a multiple defense, even if you fall within a basic structure like a 3-3-5, having players who have different skill sets, different body types, allows you to do a lot of different things within that structure. So with the guys we've brought in, I see guys who are straight nose, zero techs, Parker Peterson. I see guys who are going to be 3 techs, going to be defensive tackles who are pass rushing types like Jara Sucks. Guys who could play 3 tech, who could play 4I or boundary defensive end, guys like Charles Perkins. Then we've got true edge guys like Corey Walker. It's a nice mix, and it sounds like we might be adding some more guys. So we could do a lot of different things with that. So that's what I really like about how the defensive line improved. And then, of course, just straight up numbers. I mean, last year our defensive line rotation got down to basically 3 guys rotating through 2 spots because that's all we had. Now, if we look at the guys they've invested in, we're bringing 4 or 5 defensive linemen, plus a couple edge rushers, on top of the freshmen coming in. So we might have been -2, we're like +7. So it's a good sign for the defensive line. And then, of course, safety. Again, safety is another position where we lost numbers, but we're gaining in production. And we lost potential, but we're gaining in production, albeit at a lower level, but it's production nonetheless. So obviously, if you're following my social media channels, I love Matt Young. He's again, like I've always said, he's the type of kid who would have walked on at Wisconsin, and by this point, he would have heard about this scout team icon, kamikaze, and then he bursts onto the scene and becomes a starter. I think, and I hope that's the path for Matt. And then Trainer as well, coming in from Richmond. I like his film. And so we replaced, Braden Moore with guys like that. I'm pretty happy. And then we'll talk about the quarterbacks here for a second, and because they're in that I don't know, but I'm leaning towards improvement area, because if we want to look at what we've lost from this point last year. We lost the should have been starter in TBD, the guy who had to start in Braden Locke, and then the heir apparent in Mabry Mettoyer. And we replaced it with a full-time starter and a full-time starter. And I mean, at least for the last two guys on that list, maybe Muttoyer had a lot of promise, but he couldn't push out Braden Locke, and that was it. And he wasn't ready to be the starter. If he was, he would have played. And I think Phil Longo agreed, because if he didn't, and if Mabry didn't believe in Phil Longo, he wouldn't have followed him to Sam Houston. And I'm not going that way because it's too windy. And then Braden Locke obviously is the worst quarterback in Wisconsin history, even though he's not even the worst in the past 10 years. But anyways, we replaced that with Billy Edwards Jr., full-time starter in the Big Ten, and Danny O'Neill, a full-time starter as a true freshman. To me, if we look at the two guys we lost and the two guys we gained, we know what we're going to get out of what we lost, and there's a lot of potential in what we gained. All right, so that's the plus minuses in the transfer portal so far. I still think they're going to be adding guys. Obviously, I think they're probably still going to add on the D-line. They're definitely going to add still in the corners, and who knows, we might get a receiver pop in there as well. But pretty happy so far with the transfer portal. Speaking of the transfer portal, the next question I got was, do I think they're going to add another quarterback? I think from a numbers point of view, yes. But it is going to be tricky to see how they do it. Because, obviously you want to get guys to have a proper QB room. If you want 4 to 5 guys, you want to try to have one guy of every year to fill in the gaps. The problem you're going to get with that is the guy we would be looking for would be a junior, some guy with 2 years of eligibility. But if you bring in a guy with 2 years of eligibility, what is that going to say to the younger guys? Now, hopefully, our younger guys are mature enough to understand that it takes time to get playing time as a QB. But it is 2025, so we know that ain't going to happen. So my best scenario for bringing in another QB is, one, you either get a decent level, lower level quarterback and you bring him in as a preferred walk-on or something like that, where he knows he's clearly coming in to be a backup. Someone who's coming in who's borderline a grad assistant. But you have him there as a veteran in the room. Or you bring in a guy with a similar age, but like I've said before, bring in a guy with positional versatility. A guy who could play quarterback if needed, but is going to play wide receiver, is going to play whatever as well, to lighten the load in the QB room, but also not ruffle the feathers in the QB room. A guy like Jimmy Latimer is an interesting case. Go look at his high school film, him playing quarterback in Georgia, I believe. Kid was a stud in high school as a quarterback. But we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't add anybody in the QB room until after the the spring portal opens. But we'll have to see. So, will they bring in a quarterback? Yes. It's a touchy subject, though, so they need to be careful with who and how they add that guy. And again, speaking of quarterbacks, I got this one. I kind of like this. Am I going to still judge or hold Wisconsin QBs to the Hornibrook line going forward? No. You know why? Because, God, I hope we can get our quarterback play better. But I have augmented the Hornibrook line, and what I'm going to be calling it, and I've also added a running back component, because the reason why we could win games when we had quarterbacks hovering at or below the Hornibrook line, and for those of you who don't know what the Hornibrook line is, it is Alex Hornibrook's average stat line against Big Ten competition in his years as a starter, which was 12 for 20 for 150 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And that comes out to, I think it's like 120 QB rating. Not very good. But I've augmented it because when we take that line for QBs, for that shitty QB play, for us to still win a bunch of games, we need a lead running back who can average 130 yards a game and at least a touchdown. And that's what we did. Basically, we need to have a running back who can finish in the top 6 or 7 in the country in rushing every year if we can have quarterback play that bad. So what I've done is the Hornibrook line is now the Stave Hornibrook, White, Gordon, Taylor QB running back ratio. So the worse QB play we have, the farther away from the Hornibrook line on the negative side, we have to bump up the running backs on the other side. And I looked at, and I know guys are going to be curious, so I looked at the numbers, and I just threw it in ChatGPT, so who knows how accurate it actually was. But if the Hornibrook line is around 120 in QB rating, Braden Locke's QB rating in his time as a starter for the Badgers was, I believe, 115. So to have that, we needed to have a lead running back who, I believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I believe it was 140 yards a game rushing and over a touchdown a game. Our lead running back in his time averaged less than 100 yards. Now, again, we went by committee, but we're looking at the lead back. So obviously that's something we need to work on. So if we can come out and have a lead back who can really produce, the pressure on the quarterbacks is going to be less. The more we have quarterbacks who can produce, the less pressure we have to have on a running back needing to be All-American level. And that's football, right? We need to find a balance, and it's not numbers equaling out. It is taking off pressure when you need to and being able to produce even if the defense takes away what you do best. So no more Hornibrook line, but we're going to have the Stave, Hornibrook, White, Gordon, Taylor QB running back ratio. All right, next up, and I contemplated doing this one as a sit-down video in front of the classroom because there's a lot to learn in it, but I've decided I'm going to give the synopsis here on the walk and talk, and we'll do a deeper breakdown later. Hopefully, we get some actual film footage of spring ball this year. But and that the question is, for the layman, what is the wide zone, and do we have a history at Wisconsin of running it? So, the wide zone, the blocking scheme, it's either wide zone, outside zone, some people call it mid zone. The scheme has been around forever, and we have used it in the past forever. It's your standard, if you look at the old school Wisconsin plays, it's your standard stretch play. We ran it with, I know, Ron Dane. They ran it with him quite a bit. And essentially what an outside zone block is. If we compare it to an inside zone, and we're going to try to visualize this in our heads without actually seeing the film. But if you look at the footwork of the offensive lineman, the initial step of the offensive lineman going into an inside zone block is a short upfield step on about a 45-degree angle, and he's trying to capture the near shoulder of the blocker the defender that he is supposed to be blocking. So if you're covered to your play side shoulder, you're stepping with your play side foot, and you are climbing to it will be the backside shoulder of the person who's covering you, because that's the shoulder that's covering you. Okay? I said covering a lot. If you are covered to your backside, then you're going to take a short step with your backside foot. Again, same position, but you're climbing up through the gap. And then because of that motion between the two of you, you've now created a double team. With outside zone blocking, if you are covered to the play side, your initial footwork, pretty much regardless, is you're going to open with your play side foot almost backwards. We call it a bucket step. You're going to open that foot, hinge open your hip, and open up your hips so you're aiming for the outside shoulder of the man that you're covering. Okay, and what you're looking to do is get your inside hand or your inside forearm down the outside chest plate of the person that you're blocking. I tell my guys, you want to try to dig it out and you want to carry that guy like you're carrying on Captain America's shield. So you're working to get outside of that defender. Now that's where the outside part of outside zone stops, because the idea is we want to carry that, get to his outside, and eventually bring him upfield and then turn him as you're getting upfield. Okay, so it's like a gradual climb with that defender on our arm, on our grip right there. If we can't do that and we can't turn the guy, then basically what we do is we wall him out to the play side, and that's where we create a gap right there. So that's where the blocking scheme sorts itself out. Then with the running back, there's lots of different ways that you can use that blocking scheme and hit the blocking scheme differently. So obviously we can run a toss and just get outside. Jet sweep, we can just get outside. And we use that outside zone blocking to keep what's in the box, to stop the lateral pursuit of the defensive line, and to cut off the pursuit of the linebackers and essentially create a wall. It's almost like we're pulling the entire offensive line and creating seals, creating walls. We can run like a stretch, like we saw a lot last season. I think our best run play of the last 2 years at Wisconsin was the stretch outside zone out of pistol. And their running back is just aiming for the play side tackle, sometimes the tight end, and he's reading the second man outside on the line of scrimmage to the first guy. And what I mean by that is usually the defensive end, outside linebacker, the edge player, that's the first guy we're reading. And if he stays outside his block, he's outside, I'm going in, okay? Then when I go in, my eyes are going to go to the number one guy inside. If he is outside his man, I'm going to cut it back even farther, and then I want to get vertical. And then everything changes if it's opposite. If he gets out there, number two is inside, we're going to take it outside, etc., etc. Okay, and we could do that from the pistol, and that's more of a downhill kind of cut, and it's more flow based. That's the easiest way that I can put it. The other way that you can run it, it's also how I like to run it the most, is from the sidecar alignment, that kind of 2 yards out by, you're at the same level as the QB alignment. You come straight across the QB And the reads are the same. You're still reading 2 to 1, but you're looking now instead of going from a 45-degree angle to go vertical, we're going from a 90-degree angle to go vertical. And what I like about the sidecar alignment is it really causes overflow and causes the defense to over pursue. And if you have a fast twitch kind of running back, that this is a type of run that can hit anywhere, basically from the center to the sideline. So that's where it hits right there. The outside zone, it's very popular at all levels. It's become that way, especially in the NFL, in the Shanahan scheme, and particularly with Sean McVay and the Rams have been running the outside zone quite a bit in during his tenure there. And it's one of those schemes that once you get it down, it's really hard to stop because it creates so many angles. And then but you can still hit those angles at different angles or different modes of attack, I guess is a better way to put it. So I'm not saying angles too much. Meaning we can hit it going straight outside, we can hit it going straight downhill, we can hit it in between. With other blocking schemes like power schemes, you got to hit exactly where the gap is. So with a zone, like any zone concept, we're getting options, but we can hit those options at different angles, and it can really look like very different plays to the defense. But scheme-wise, you're running the same play. Then when you add in, like we're going to do this year, with wider surface on the box, by adding multiple tight ends, by extending the box, by adding multiple tight ends, condensed formations, now you're creating more gaps that the defense has to fill. And with the wide nature of the blocking scheme, that's where you really can get a tendency for the defense to over pursue. And when they over pursue, those lanes become even more apparent. So I love outside zone. It's my favorite blocking scheme as a play caller, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Jeff Grimes uses it with the personnel that we have in Madison. All right, and last up here, let's talk about the coaching staff. Let's talk about the changes to the coaching staff and some questions we have about the staff. So the first real question we have about the staff is, what kind of balance do I look to achieve, or would I prefer in setting up a staff? A balance between experience and youth. And for me, that one is, I don't necessarily look at age when I come to it, or experience. For me, it's just about how the staffs work together, and more importantly, what you're expecting each group to do. I think there are certain position groups that, for me on the outside, I want to see an experienced guy who has been around the block a few times. Offensive line, definitely one of them. Linebackers, definitely one of them. Because those positions are the ones where you tend to need that little bit of old school grit, that little bit of old school attitude. And you need to be able to work with kids there. Then you've got positions as well where the guys might be a little more volatile, a little bit, dare I say, opposed to authority. Positions like wide receiver, where having a young guy who can relate to the players is extremely valuable in terms of getting the most out of those players. And so for me, you can have a staff full of old guys, but they've got to be able to relate to the young guys, and they've got to be able to find a way to get their message across. And you could have a staff full of old grizzled veterans, but they have got to a staff full of young guns, but they've got to be able to assert their authority and lead by the tone of their voice as much as they do by how they relate to the players. So it is a delicate balancing act. Looking at the staff we have right now, am I happy that Kenny Guyton kind of became the quarterback coach by default? No. Am I fine with Kenny Guyton being the QB coach? Yes. If they would have announced straight away that Kenny Guyton was being promoted at the end of the season, that's fine. I think he's a young up-and-comer. He's a guy who is on track to probably be a coordinator in the next 2 to 3 years. He's well-regarded. He's a good recruiter. He is good with the players. I actually have some personal knowledge of Kenny Guyton because my running back coach was actually recruited by Kenny Guyton, or he was a part of his recruiting process when he was a grad assistant at Houston. And more importantly, he's a guy that in that area of Texas is well known and well regarded. So I like Kenny Guyton as a coach. I think he has performed admirably in his chances that he was given to be a play caller and to lead the quarterbacks already. So I'm okay with him. But you can tell he was not the first choice. Obviously, we heard, depending on the sources you believe, there was 2 other guys that were lined up ready to come in, and for some reason they're not on the staff right now. Now, that being said, I think one of them, Blake Rowland, is going to end up on the staff somehow. But I thought when he wasn't going to be the QB coach, that he would end up being the receiver coach, because that was where his experience actually at the FBS level was as a receiver coach. I still think he might end up on the staff as in an analyst type role. But there's that. Then Jordan Reed coming in as a wide receiver coach. From what I hear, and again, I'm reading the same things you guys are, he's well regarded as a recruiter, he's well liked, and he's a good teacher. That's fine. I don't mind coaches coming in who are under the radar, because to be honest, and this is nothing against you Badger fans, you would have hated it regardless. If we would have got a big name from somewhere else, you'd find a way to be mad about it. And now we got the under the radar, who the hell is this guy kind of guy. It's the same thing. Don't care. I like the younger under the radar guys that he's brought in so far, and I trust the hiring process that we've gone through so far. But the one thing that we need to make sure we make abundantly clear, that is that leadership at Wisconsin might have changed after Barry Alvarez stepped down, but this is still the University of Wisconsin. So what do I mean by that? We're still cheap. And maybe Luke Fickell was given a higher pool for his assistant coaches than Paul Chryst got at the end. By Big Ten standards, we're still cheap. So therefore, there's only so much we can aspire to get. Number 2, we are an offense that for decades has been QB and wide receiver kind of negligent. And we get lucky every now and then when we get somebody who can produce at those levels and move on to the next level. But when you are being asked to coach a position that is basically seen as an afterthought by the program, you're not going to get a lot of big names that are interested. And now we're in a situation where we're trying to rebuild those rooms. Again, I think a lot of guys are like, you know what? No, I'm going to stay at Houston. where we might have gone 4-8, but at least I know what my role is, and I know what what the plans are going forward. I'm not gonna uproot my situation to go somewhere that I could be fired at the end of the year because we go 4-8 here. So sometimes you get what you get, and if that means an internal hire and a guy coming in from the MAC, so be it. It's what we used to do anyways. So it is what it is. I'm fine with the coaching staff where it is. I'm curious to hear what happened in the interview process that caused us to miss out on these guys that apparently we were all set to get. All right, so I think we're going to call it there for today. A little bit longer one because it's been a few since we've done one of these videos. So coming up this week, this is coming out, this should be coming out the same day that it's recorded, so this should be Wednesday. I'm going to finally finish recording the Billy Edwards breakdown and get that out. Hopefully that will be tomorrow's video or Friday's. And then we'll see. I don't quite know what direction we're going to go here in the fall, or in the winter, when there's not much going on after the portal closes. So if we get any offensive guys coming in the portal, obviously we're going to break down those guys. Thinking about doing a video on the defensive line and how the guys who were brought in could change the defensive system going forward. Some guesses I had with that, but I'd like to maybe hear a little bit more about that before I sit down, spend hours making a video, and then have it be completely different because we're told otherwise. But we'll see. But definitely, Billy Edwards coming out this week. Might solicit for another walk and talk to have one ready for Monday, but we'll see. It's the winter. We're in the slow season. We'll see how it is. Maybe I'll actually take some time to actually write something, because we hit 100 subscribers on Substack, which is where the dairy rate started. Really happy to see that. I've actually had some people sign up as paid subscribers there, which has been awesome. And what I've done, and what I'm gonna do, is every dollar that I get this season is going in a separate pool, and the idea is either the Ohio State game or the Washington game. I'm gonna come over and do the dairy raid live from Camp Randall. So, but that wouldn't even be possible without the support of you guys. So thank you for reading the Substack, watching the YouTube, following on the Twitter, all those kind of good things. Thank you for letting me feel like what I'm doing here matters. So I appreciate that. All right, that's enough of me blabbering. That's it for today. Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.